So I ventured back out to the movies. When Tenet came out, I went to see it. Couldn't wait to go see it. I met up with some friends of mine, grabbed our masks, and we went to the Harkins Arrowhead Theater. Harkins is a big chain based in Arizona. It's a local chain. They have a couple of theaters, I think in Colorado. They have one in Cerritos, California. But primarily they're based in Arizona. And they have a loyalty base out here in Arizona. They're one of the last few big local chains around. Because everything else is an AMC, everything else is a Regal, everything else is a Cinemark. Harkins does the job. So we went to go see it at Harkins Arrowhead. Had a great time. Brief review of the movie. I liked it. Saw it twice. The second time I saw it was at the AMC Dolby Cinema with another friend of mine. And they had the theater cranked to 11. But I was able to understand the movie better a second time. So the movie theaters opened. And I was happy because the movie theaters took a common sense approach during this time of the pandemic. Put my mask on both times, took it off to put some popcorn in my mouth. Seats were blocked off. Employees had on gloves. They wore their masks. Everything was totally safe, and I felt safe. Just to be sure, I got home from the theaters both times and took an extremely hot shower to disinfect myself, just in case. But I had a great time. The theaters were opened. Now, the dilemma that the theaters are facing. Everybody wanted the theaters open. People were complaining movie theaters were closed, so the theaters opened. Like I said, a common sense approach. Social distancing, hand sanitizer, have to wear your masks, limited showings of movies, seats blocked off, everything done safely. Hollywood is postponing their movies again. That makes no sense to me. Now, granted, Tenet has not grossed $200 million domestically opening weekend. I think it's like 45 or 50 million right now on a budget of over 200 million. Worldwide, it has hit the 300 million mark. Not bad considering. I don't know what the studios expected. Did they think everybody was going to flock out there and run to the theaters and it was going to gross 200 million opening weekend and we're going to be back to normal? No. But I guarantee you, over the long game, it will make money. But they had some big releases on the horizon, set to come out in November. Me being a Marvel fan, I can't wait for Black Widow. That's going to launch the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which would then lead to the Eternals, which was the next one up. That was set to come out in November. Why not? The theaters are opened. That's now coming out in May of next year. Same thing with Wonder Woman 84. Saw the trailer, the final trailer at the beginning of Tenet. That's been pushed to sometime next year. Dune, that's been back and forth. At first, Disney said they were going to put Soul on Disney, Pixar's Soul on Disney+. Just like they did Mulan, but Mulan was supposed to be a one-off. Now, a spokesperson for Disney is doubling down and saying, no. Mulan was a one-off. We're planning on Soul being in the theaters in November. Okay. But you've postponed Marvel's Black Widow. And now, the big news. The James Bond film, No Time to Die, has been moved to April of next year. That was all set to come out in November. If any of you guys have listened to the podcast of John Campea on YouTube, you need to. I like the guy. And the guy's been spot on about this whole thing from the beginning. If the theaters don't have content, they're going to have to close again. And the North American Theater Organization, or the National Alliance for Theater Owners, whatever they're called, the acronym is NATO. The VP said, if the big chains don't have content, if they don't have content, they're going to have to shut down again. Because you need the big titles to go into the theater, to get people into the theater. So the big news, Regal, the second largest chain in America, is shutting down again. We don't know for how long. We don't know if they're going to be able to survive this next shutdown. We don't know if this is going to be a domino effect now. The big chains, AMC is number one. AMC has been on financial hard times, actually. They were set to come out of it this past year until the pandemic hit and until they had to shut down. They reopened. To show you how safe they were being, my friend who we went to go see Tenet together, he had on a mask that wasn't quite right. And they came up to him and said, hey, would you mind wearing this mask? And of course, no argument from him. He said, okay, I'm so sorry. I'll put this one on. Great. So again, a common sense approach. When we got out of the Dolby Cinema, the gentleman, the usher, had this big disinfected thing that looked as big as a rifle. So I knew that they were doing things the right way. But AMC was on financial hard times. AMC may have to shut down again. And Lord knows if they will survive this time. Same thing with Cinemark and the associated theaters with Cinemark. I don't know about the local chain Harkins here. Harkins has a loyalty base. Harkins has always survived with their loyalty base. Harkins is always packed. Harkins does a thing called Tuesday Night Classics, where they show a classic film every Tuesday night for $5. And usually they're packed. I went this past Tuesday to see Casablanca. Pretty good-sized crowd, considering that the seats are blocked off for social distancing and people were spaced, and considering everything else. But a lady who sat 4 seats down from me, because 4 seats are blocked off, turned to me after the movie, was like, Harkins can do Tuesday Night Classics. And I was happy. I was like, I was back, Tuesday Night Classics. I'm obsessed with it, especially when they show a big film. So it's quite possible Harkins could survive. But there's an Alamo Drafthouse in Tempe. Alamo Drafthouse had to file, I think, for Chapter 11 once the shutdown happened. And a friend of mine hosted screenings at Alamo Drafthouse. Who knows if Alamo Drafthouse is going to survive with this? I don't know. So I'm hoping this is not a domino effect. But the scary thing is with this, by the time the theaters do open, or by the time that the studios release their movies next year, will there be theaters out there to show these things? So far, there's no bailout for the movie theaters, just like there's no bailout for Broadway. That's a different topic altogether, and there's plenty of great YouTube channels out there that are talking about what's happening on Broadway right now. California doesn't have their theaters open yet. New York doesn't have their theaters open yet, despite the fact that bars and bowling alleys are opened. Makes no sense to me. So considering all of this, Tenet is doing pretty well. But how are we going to know? How are we going to know if maybe it was Tenet itself? Maybe Tenet was not the movie. Maybe this was not the Christopher Nolan film to connect with everybody. I mean, the week Tenet came out, even though it got a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, I think it was like an 85, 86% fresh, a lot of reviewers pretty much did not give it the rave that other Nolan films did. Some people compared it to Inception. So maybe it was the movie itself. Not only that, people complained about the sound mix. Christopher Nolan's had issues with his sound mixes as well. Mind you, they have won Academy Awards for Best Sound. Inception, Dunkirk. But everybody complained about Interstellar, how loud that sound was. So it almost seems like it was a middle finger, the fact that the dialogue was drowned out by the EDM score. But maybe Tenet wasn't the film, but we're not going to know. There was no counter programming to Tenet. There was nothing counter to Tenet. There were no other new releases on the horizon because Warner Brothers decided to postpone Wonder Woman 84. Who knows? Maybe Wonder Woman 84 would have connected with everybody. I know Tenet had this in anticipation, but maybe it wasn't the right film. But we're not going to know that now. We are not going to know that. Now, Disney put Mulan on Disney Plus. Here's another side to this story, or this argument, or this discussion. If you have a Disney Plus subscription, which we do, you had to pay $30 to have Mulan. Seems about right. You know, that's how much you'd be paying to go to the movie theater anyway to see it. I would have much rather seen Mulan on the big screen. It was the best of the Disney remakes because they didn't approach it like a remake. But $30. People complained. I have Disney Plus and I gotta pay $30 for Mulan, and if I decide to cancel my Disney Plus, I lose Mulan? Well, of course. You're paying for a service. You are paying for a service. You don't own Disney Plus. Just when you go to the movies to see something, you don't expect to go home with a copy of that movie. When it comes out physically, if you want to own it, you buy it. But Disney Plus has every right to do that. But I know some people, the term John Campea used, some people have been blissfully ignorant. Yeah, well, Disney Plus had Mulan on, so they could easily put Black Widow on streaming. They could easily put all the big Marvel films on streaming. Let me tell you something. That won't happen. Not with the cost of how much those movies make. Not with the cost and not with 200 million, 300 million, however much they cost to make. They will never make back their money. So you are not going to get a massive blockbuster tentpole release for streaming. It won't happen. And I know some people, you know, they're done with the movie theaters because of people have forgotten movie theater etiquette. I totally get that. People have forgotten that. People on their cell phones, people texting. I'm one of those people who gets annoyed with it, but I take myself out. I report them to the manager. I don't care. I'm there to watch the movie. But I'm telling you, you will not get those big tentpole releases. So I find this disheartening. The theaters opened. They took a common sense approach. What the studios should be doing is releasing these movies and taking a long-term approach. I did a video about the newspaper ads. If you go back and see how the newspaper ads would have this hype back in the 60s and the 70s and even the 50s, you judged the success of a movie by how long it was held over at one of the big movie palaces. You'd see in the paper, Rosemary's Baby, second big week. Rosemary's Baby held over for a third big week. Rosemary's Baby, fourth massive week. That's what they need to do. They need to think long-term again. Instead of thinking the short term, that it's going to gross $200 million in opening weekend. No, think long-term. We're not going to know because of the postponement. I hope this isn't a domino effect, but I totally understand. And if the studios want their movies shown in the theater, which that's where they need to be seen, then I need to start giving money to the theaters and the chains to stay open. I pray this isn't a domino effect, but I think we're going to see a massive, massive paradigm shift in this whole thing once the theaters reopen again, if all of them happen to close again because of lack of content. Did the theaters reopen too soon? That's a good question. Or should Hollywood be releasing these films since the theaters are open? Give me your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think. I want to hear from you. Talk to you soon.